Hey nerds, we're doing a discussion of Ahsoka Part 5 called Shadow Warrior, and it starts now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm David.
And I'm Nathan.
So, I was a little sick, so thank you to David and Nathan covering for me, episodes 3 and 4. So we are covering Part 5 of Ahsoka, the spoiler-free summary. Ahsoka confronts her past, while Hera and her allies undertake a rescue mission. And again, this whole episode was directed and written by Dave Filoni, and the whole thing is created by Dave Filoni. So he is in all 3 of those major categories. So David, what do you think of this episode here?
This is by far the high note of the series. I loved it. I really loved this episode. I really feel hyped about it.
Yeah. Oh, Nathan, what do you think about this episode here?
Yeah, I agree with David. This is probably my favorite episode, maybe because I'm a Clone Wars / Rebels watcher, and I have a great affection for Ahsoka, and it was great to see some, without giving away anything about the episode. The last episode ended with Anakin, and it's, of course, he's gonna factor into this episode. So there's a lot of Clone Wars specific stuff in there, which is really cool. I think it has a lot of allusions to other genre fantasy, and we can get into that when we get into the breakdown, which is also pretty cool as well. And I think, and also some of the visuals were some of the best that we've seen in Star Wars in TV or movies in a while. And we can also get into that when we start breaking it down with the screenshots. So yeah, it was a pretty solid episode.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the both of you. I think that having watched the Mandalorian related episodes, we're talking about post Return of Jedi. So I'm not going to go back to Andor or even Obi-Wan Kenobi, because that was like before episode 4. So we're talking about the time within the timeline of Star Wars where it's after Return of the Jedi. So I'm talking about Mandalorian seasons 1 and 3, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. I think that this episode was definitely in my top 3 out of those 3 series that we've had so far. And we've had some pretty good episodes of those ones. Just remember Ahsoka's debut in The Mandalorian. That was a great one. In The Mandalorian and also in Book of Boba. I know that, Nathan, you and I geeked out when Cad Bane showed up I think it was in Boba Fett. He showed up and it was like so amazing. So those were like some highlights of some episodes, but this is definitely in the top 3 because, like you said, it mashes like the Clone Wars stuff. It didn't deal with it. It was very self-contained in some ways and told a really kind of rich story through a lot of different types of themes and genres, like you said, Nathan. And it really, and the visuals again were stunning in the same time. So I think that because of all those type of combination of things and the care and the respect that Filoni showed to the other type of material that he created in the other shows, I think that it really solidifies this as a very good episode. And again, we can get into kind of like some of those themes and visuals as we move along. So having said all that, David, what do you think? What rating would you give it of Part 5?
I would give it a 9.
Okay, Nathan, what do you think?
So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days. I want to give headroom for it to get better, but like this was actually pretty good. So I think I would give it a movie marathon as well, and a 9. This is probably, like I said, for a lot of reasons, some of the best Star Wars that I've seen in a very long time. And that I'm more of a Star Trek person than a Star Wars person, but I watch it and I know I know a lot more than the average person about Star Wars. But like this is actually pretty cool stuff, and I really like the Clone Wars and the Rebels shows. So yeah, it was, I think I give it a 9. It's really satisfying for people who've watched the Clone Wars and Rebels stuff for the last, 10 years, 15 years now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a 9. I've watched it several times already. Even if I weren't preparing for our conversation, I would have watched it several times. So movie marathon.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree with all of you. I think it's definitely going to be a movie marathon. I think all the points that you made, Nathan, are all very legit. I think for me, it's definitely, you get, of all the characters that we've seen in the Star Wars universe, Ahsoka is the only one that you've seen from the very beginning. I'm talking about if you watch Tales of the Jedi, the shorts on Disney Plus, it talks about Ahsoka and her origin and how she was able to be one with the Force. And you evolve into kind of the Clone Wars, where even the Star Wars Clone Wars movie that people did not like, that was like her debut in the Clone Wars universe. And then throughout the series, and then the brilliant kind of 4-episode arc at the end of Clone Wars was like amazing stuff. You saw her ascension there, and then another phase of her life was the Rebels, being Fulcrum, and then her encounter with Vader in one of the I think it was the end of season 2 Rebels. So like having that all come about, and then now seeing her in live action in Mandalorian, and now in her. So yes, give it a 9. Definitely, because of all that.
Yeah, I care more about Ahsoka than I do Luke, and I know that's blasphemous for certain people. But I know a lot more about Ahsoka. And by the way, this is not an endorsement for like giving me a background story on. I actually like them to stop talking about Skywalkers. We've talked about this before. I don't need them to delve into to Luke and the time between the original series and the sequels. But like I like Anakin more than I like Luke at this point, because I have a lot of backstory on Anakin and the Clone Wars. So yeah, and Ahsoka comes without all the murdering. So of course she's higher than Anakin. So yeah, it's really satisfying to see her come full circle in a lot of ways in this series. So yeah, it was a really good episode. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I just wanted to, before we get into spoilers, I just wanted to give us a plug. So if you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe so you can get more content like this. And so yeah, let's get into some spoiler breakdown talk. Okay, so basically we left off from part 4, was at the end of it was with the encounter between Anakin and Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. So those of you that did not watch Rebels, the World Between Worlds is like this ominous place, but like place where it's like time stands still, like it's very ethereal. It's not, it's just like this space in some ways between the real world and whatever world is there. I don't really know the background of it that much, unfortunately. I haven't read up too much about it, but go ahead, Nathan.
So it shows up in Rebels. We've seen Ahsoka there. We've also seen Ezra Bridger there. It connects. It's a place where the Force connects the past, the present, and the future. So there was a point in the Rebels show where, and the Rebels show is set just before A New Hope, where Ezra was in the World Between Worlds, and he heard people from the original trilogy. He heard Qui-Gon from like the prequels, and he heard Rey from the future in the World Between Worlds. So you can get anywhere in time and space, basically, in the World Between Worlds.
Yeah. And basically what happened was that actually with Ahsoka, what happened was that Ahsoka in one of the episodes of Rebels was fighting Vader, and basically she was trapped in that. I don't remember the planet that she was in. She was on.
It might have been Mustafar. I don't remember, but I don't remember.
No, it wasn't Mustafar, but it was one of the.
It was a Sith. It was a Sith planet. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what happened was that she was, again, at the end of the episode, it was assumed that Ahsoka has passed on, was the one that pulled her from that temple and that into the World Between Worlds, and that's how Ahsoka lived in some ways, because she was actually fighting Vader and forced Kanan and Ezra out of the temple while it was collapsing and things like that. So I did go back to the episode, I think 2 episodes to rewatch some of the stuff, so it was pretty interesting stuff there. But in any case, that's the world. We find ourselves actually seeing Hera Syndulla walking out on Cetos trying to investigate what happened with Sabine, because from the last episode we saw that Sabine had went with Morgan Elsbeth and also Baylan to those coordinates where they think Thrawn is located. So we don't get to see those 3 characters in this episode, so it was very focused on, again, Hera and her son Jason, and also also Ahsoka and Anakin. So you see that it gets some sort of, Jason gets some sort of feeling right here, and we know that Jason is the son of Kanan Jarrus, who was a Padawan at the time during Rebels.
Actually,
Yep. Yep.
Before he gets his feeling, we have this scene with Wuhan and the Sabine's helmet, and it just looks like it's such a sight. So this scenes like this make you question how they treat droids, because if they have feelings, they're basically slaves. They shouldn't if they write scenes like this, and then they have scenes in other movies and other projects where they're basically not treated like human or sentient beings. But he seems to be actually feeling pain and regret here. He's like, they never listened to me. I told him to stay together. And you even see it's look at the sad eyes.
Yeah, we've seen droids that have emote a lot more lately. Yeah. Even in Mandalorian season 3, we saw that. We also saw that in So that's exactly K2SO, and also in Solo. Yeah. Those people that saw Solo, you saw that Lando's co-pilot was we saw a lot of emotion of droids that have been throughout. So even in the originals, we see 3PO he emotes a lot throughout the original.
I mean, he's always He's always exasperated, and that could just be like an algorithm that's like a sassy algorithm. But they try to show more emotion, I think, with the newer droids. Anyway, that was just an aside. So before Jason senses anything as well, that we actually see Ahsoka and start to fight first. So that scene comes before him sensing anything.
Right. So this is the world between worlds, and so this is where kind of Anakin left off episode part 4. Where Ahsoka is meeting with Anakin, and so it's like this interaction. She's shocked. She's getting her bearings in some ways, but at the same time realized that she lost the lightsaber battle with Baylan there, and so it was again the Master and Padawan reunited in a lot of ways. People are cheering, and you don't know what his intentions are. But I rewatched this scene just a few moments ago before I jumped on this live stream, and I'm like trying to explain to my brother who's watching it right now, trying to explain to him like what this is like. What is it?
Well, he says that he's trying to finish her training, right? That's what he says.
Yeah, but it's more, but like I try not to be too spoilery about it. But so I like in some analogy, I would say that he's like an enhanced Force Ghost in some ways. It's like, yes, it's like Force Ghost, but not what we've seen before in the past with Force Ghost. I
don't know that he's necessarily, so like, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't need this to be too explained, especially if she's really like half dead. Him not being an actual Force Ghost and not like translucent, it would make sense because she's more closer to where he is in his realm of the dead than people usually are when they see Force Ghosts. So him being able to actually interact with her as opposed to just being able to speak to her doesn't bother me too much. There's also suggestions that he's not Anakin at all. He might be a manifestation of like the father, which is a deep cut reference to like Clone Wars. So, but anyway, who was part of basically which the father was the manifestation of the balance between the Force. He had a daughter and a son. Anyway, who was the dark side and the light side. So there are people that's who he is, but it's not actually Anakin. But like I said, I don't really need this explained that much. I understand the purpose of this entire thing was to get her through her issues with Anakin and feeling like and the issues that Baylan Skoll specifically dug into her with in the previous episode, saying that your legacy, just like your master, is going to be of death. That's what held her back. That's why she lost the fight. And I think in Anakin's point of view anyway, that's why he says that the question here is to live or die. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is like back in like he always has these. You notice during the start of Ahsoka series that Ahsoka herself has an internal struggle ever since she left the Jedi Order in Star Wars Clone Wars, because she has no idea like what exactly it is to be a Jedi. Even she told us that there's more to it than just being a Jedi. Even Baylan mentioned to her when they were fighting, saying like that a Jedi lost their ways and everything, and there's some methods of the Jedi cannot be done. Right. And Ahsoka felt that too, that she, and at the same time, when she knows that when she saw Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, she became more down herself, and then she's thinking that, what if I didn't leave? What happens if I stayed at the Jedi Order? Would it prevent Anakin to become who he is now then? Or what happens if I did left, or is nothing at all? So I think that, as Nathan pointed out, that is this really Anakin's Force Ghost, or just a manifestation in her head of her doubts and everything built up and brought to a form, or it could be a connection. So
yeah, that's the third option, that this is just a hallucination and it's what she needed to get over her issues, and because she's in the world between worlds, this manifestation is being created for her. So it's everything that's happening in there you can think of as being from her subjective point of view. So you can't necessarily take anything at face value. It's for her. It's almost like a hallucination. It's almost like a hallucination. So
okay, to be honest, I think that any type of Force Ghost encounter that has happened in the Star Wars movies, it's pretty much, you could argue it's a hallucination in some ways.
This is true. Yeah.
So that's why I said it's more like an enhanced type of Force Ghost, because we haven't really seen like Force Ghosts in the movies done like lightsaber duels with their Padawans and things like that, with the apprentice and things. So you never seen that. So
they usually far more see-through as well. So
exactly. So so it was definitely a very interesting kind of take on that whole relationship that hasn't really been explored in the past. So going to this scene right here, so this is where kind of Jason was saying to Hera that I sense something, I'm feeling something, and kind of asking his mother to, okay, come with me, sense what's going on. At the same time, Carson right there is he's like feeling the pressure of all the leadership and command, trying to get them to report back to command and things like that. So Hera's like conflicted. Okay, should I report back to command, or should I listen to my son right now and to further investigate what the heck is going on and what happens to Bean and Morgan right now? So you can say Jason's trying to describe to Hera, like, okay, can you hear some of the lightsaber duels and stuff like that? So good mix of sound right here of like the waves crashing became like the lightsaber duel, and then like having Hera also listen to, because Hera's not Force sensitive. Hera is just a star fight.
She's not, but one of the things that people have been talking about in this show is that they fixed the Force a little bit from the prequels and the Mandalorian stuff. The whole conversation that Ahsoka had with Sabine about the Force, everyone having the ability, but some people having a greater talent. So of course he has a greater talent, but so he was able to hear it easily, but she focused and she could hear it as well, which is why she listened to him. So I think this also goes back to the original movies, where it was either Yoda or Obi-Wan who said that the Force is in all of us. It surrounds us. It surrounds us. It binds us.
Yoda said that.
Exactly.
Empire Strikes Back. Yeah.
So Hera being able to hear it is more in line with the original movies than the midichlorian stuff that showed up in the prequels.
Yeah, that's that. As a Star Wars fan, we disregard the midichlorian stuff, and that Yoda scene is probably one of my favorite scenes of all time. It's just like so really deep and philosophical and just really great overall. But it made me really, really love Star Wars because of that. But in any case, so she's able to sense something. Her son was able to sense something, and then basically Hera then tells Carson to get his X-wings airborne to do another sweep, even though Carson's like, what the heck? We already did the sweep. We found nothing. And so order him to look again. Let's see what's happening.
Yeah, it's so funny, the conversation that he has quickly. This very short conversation he has with, was it Wayun? I forget. It's Huyang. Yeah. He's like, yeah, his father was a Jedi, and so he has abilities. And Carson's like, look, it's like, okay, whatever. It's like, okay.
It's very interesting. Very interesting type of interactions there. And then we go back to the world between worlds here.
This is a really cool
lightsaber duel. Yep, really cool lightsaber. So you can tell some of the movements of Anakin.
Yeah, the twirling.
One Kenobi series. Yep. Yeah. And then you see that he broke the bridge like from Thor and she gets dropped into the Clone Wars. Now, this is all over social media, and we need to mention it that this young actress was in like 2 other major movies in the past. David, did you see that? Yep.
Yeah, I did. I did not realize that this is the same actress of those 3 movies. Until you pointed out, I was like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, I just found it fascinating. I was like, so for those of you that did not look at social media, so she was young Gamora in Infinity War at the end of the scene of the Thanos snap. And then she was also in Barbie. So she was America Ferrera's character's daughter in Barbie. So I totally did not see that. I was like, wow, that's totally like, and also because she was much younger when she did Infinity War, so you don't really see that type of progression. And she was not in makeup when she was in Barbie, so she was in human form.
Right.
But yeah, it's really cool. I think that my brother also pointed out that these clone troopers are all like real life live action.
Yeah, unlike the movie they were all digital. They were all digital in the prequels.
Exactly. So this is really, you can see the authenticity and why Filoni made that choice to make it more real in a lot of ways. And you can see this is making like peak Clone Wars.
Yeah, changed his hair for the beginning. Like the beginning of the Clone Wars is what his hair looked like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice touches there and there.
I like how they set the scene there. They were in one of the battles in the Clone Wars series. They didn't show a specific scene. It's all smoke and everything. When you think about
you see the Twi'leks. You see the Twi'leks in the background. So I think it was one of the first episodes of the Clone Wars when they were trying to liberate the Twi'leks from the Separatists. So yeah, it was like the third or second episode. I don't remember off the top of my head. So that, I think that's the battle that we're talking about.
Yeah. So even Ahsoka in the previous scenes was saying that this was her first battle, and you can tell because she had the green lightsaber. So it was like her first lightsaber. So it's really cool to have this in live action, and it just reminds us of the richness of the Clone Wars and how important, but also how awesome the stories were in the Clone Wars. And highly recommend people to rewatch that because it really is well done in a lot of ways. Some of the compelling storylines throughout it, they played along with kind of like the tension between characters, on top of the fact that there's a war that's going on. So it's really well done, and the fact that we get this in live action is just such an amazing treat for a lot of fans of just Star Wars in general.
And it's really good attention to detail as well. Like they got her face paint right. They got the fact that she, at the beginning of Clone Wars, she was wearing the Padawan like beads in the back, and then when we cut again to a scene later on, the beads are gone because she's not a Padawan anymore because she left the Jedi Order. So yeah, so it's they really got all the details. It's really cool. It's really cool to see this in live action.
Right, David, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, as Daniel pointed out, as you keep on going, Nathaniel, we go later for the scene as we saw. Yeah, there you go. And we saw her see a flash from Anakin that she knew in the Clone Wars turned to Darth Vader, which led to the scene of the Battle of Mandalore, where she was involved in the season of Mandalore. When that was the battle when Anakin and her split up in different things. That Anakin was protecting the Grand Chancellor Palpatine at the time.
Yep.
And while she is helping the men lay siege to liberate it.
Right.
But she felt a presence right before Order 6 was initiated, that she felt that something happened, but she didn't know what it was. So then, that's when they later found out the scene that Anakin came over to her and say, I don't remember this battle. And then she explained what happened. That's the battle when we split up. And that's when I found out what happened to you.
Right. So before that happened, before the Siege of Mandalore, they're seeing some of the investigating here. Great visuals on the ghosts going near the water. Look at that. That's really well done. That's like movie level. That was kind of like
it's good.
When the Millennium Falcon was on the water, and so it's very similar to that, but very well done. I like the ship. I like Ahsoka's ship. It's like it's not as iconic as say the X-Wing or the Millennium Falcon or like even TIE fighters, but the ships are getting some really good charm, and we've seen the Ghost in multiple iterations as well. So the Ghost is it's coming on to me now. So I'm really liking it a lot. Yeah.
You also see some X-Wings there on the water, close to the water. So
Exactly. So they're still investigating where it is. I think that at this point I think Jason was trying to say, well, you're going to go to a certain coordinate, and then basically Hera's like, okay, we got to go to this specific coordinate, and that's where the lightsaber battle is happening, in that specific coordinate, and probably where Ahsoka is located. So they're trying to look for them and try to say go low. This is what David was talking about with the scene, and you can see that she's a little bit older.
You can also see the Mandalorians that are loyal to Darth Maul, because they have the specs on their helmet, which is also very cool to see in live action. The Darth Maul committed Mandalorian. Mandalorians here. But she does a
Right.
really good act. She's moving like just like Ahsoka in the cartoon here. Like she's just like spinning around, kicking like both lifesavers. You know.
Yeah, and we can
It's
see
cool
Captain
to
Rex
see.
right here. Yep, go ahead.
It's very cool we see Captain Rex there, who
Yep.
was voiced by the original Morrison. I was like happy to hear that when he said the line saying, "Let's get moving." I'm like, "Yep, that's the line." There you go. And that's when we saw Anakin pop up saying the line, I don't remember this battle." And then that's when Ahsoka explained to her that's when they split up in two different missions. And then later on he explained to her about how she felt, and during this battle that she felt some connection going on, that something happened to him back in the Coruscant. And she feel like, I think at that time when he fought against Darth Maul, she felt she wanted to finish him right away and get back to Coruscant as fast as possible, but she was too late.
Yeah.
And all of this is actually in the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars. You have to go back to watch it. It's like almost cinematic. It's great.
It is cinematic.
Go back and watch
it's a pretty good movie. The last couple episodes, like they have.
The last 4, go ahead and watch it. Please do that, because it's all about Ahsoka, and it's just like from her point of view. And again, the parallels to that in episode 3, yeah, just well done. Like you don't, the whole thing about making the prequels great again, Filoni is just like knocked it out of the park here. And I think even with these kind of scenes from live action, making the prequels, like, it makes you want to revisit them. I'm not like to the point where I want to revisit the movies, but I definitely revisited Clone Wars and just to see that again.
It makes the movies better. It definitely makes the movies better, especially between Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And this is just adding to that lore. So yeah, this conversation that she has here with Anakin, because like David said, he wasn't in this battle, so she has to tell him about it. And what he says here is, Ahsoka, within you will be everything I am, all the knowledge I possess, just as I inherited knowledge from my master and he from his. That you're part of a legacy, and that's part of her concern here. Like she says, but part of my legacy is one of death and war, and that's also her concern. Like she mentions, right. And this is something that Mace Windu mentions in I think in the Phantom Menace, that they're peacekeepers. They were supposed to be peacekeepers. So she's 14 right. now when the Clone Wars started, but we know from the Tales of the Jedi that she was taken as a baby. So for 14 years she was trained as a peacekeeper, and now she's a warrior. And it didn't sit with her well when she was 14, and it doesn't sit with her. It still doesn't sit with her well now that she's 40. That she was trained as a peacekeeper for most of her life, most of her early life, and then she was pushed into being a warrior because the Jedi lost their way and decided to stop being peacekeepers and started being generals. So
right. And also I think that what Anakin really said to her was basically, well, I trained you to be a soldier because that's what was necessary for the times, even though she felt very conflicted about that. Like, it's supposed to be peacekeepers, but because we are at war, I have to train you to survive. And if you don't, and you become just a peacekeeper, you're gonna die. So that's why I trained you the way that I trained you, was because I wanted you to survive being a Jedi. So that was a very good point that he made. I don't know if it's justification for war, but at the same time, it's like justification for her.
It's justification for, you could understand his point of view, but her point of view is also valid here when she says that from everything that you are, she says here, you're more than that, Anakin. You're also more powerful and dangerous than anyone realized. And she's just alluding to her becoming a Darth Vader. And he says, is that what this is about? What your issue is about? Like, you're worried about me becoming. So, and then he says again, and then this time his lightsaber is red. So he's basically becoming Anakin from Mustafar, basically, before he became Vader. So yeah, the other thing that I saw over the last couple days is that if you go back to the first scene when it was basically her first battle, she was 14 there and he was 19. So they were basically like child soldiers. So while he has a lot of wisdom to impart to her, they were pushed into this weird situation at very young ages. And it wasn't, she says, it wasn't what they were trained for. They were trained to be peacekeepers, not warriors. So I can understand why she's messed up. So
it's like her own therapy therapy session right now, going through all the trauma. And
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, this scene is also.
No, I was just saying that there were some like people thinking that there's like some sort of romantic relationship between Ahsoka and Anakin, which I'm like, are you guys kidding me? No, it's like a brother and sister relationship and stuff like that, or father to sister, father to daughter kind of thing. Because
It's more like a big brother, but yeah, definitely, yeah.
I'm more like a big brother because, like you said, like Nathan said, that she was taken as a baby, so he had no family. So Anakin is likely the closest thing to her as a family, like more like a father figure to her or brother figure, whichever. And then, so it hurt her a lot more, which led to this fight of he cooked her out of that flashback, and then he shows up walking like Vader, and then he said the line, "You lack conviction," and you see his eyes turning red. Not pure Sith eyes, which is a little yellow in the middle, just red. That's it. So, and he fights him, and his skin turns pale.
Yeah, it's just like just like he looked in Mustafar. And I think when he came out, when he kicked her back, yeah, there's the transition. You see him as Vader a little bit as well here for a second. It's the great, like I said, the visuals on this episode very evocative and very cool. Because if we're going back to what we were talking about earlier, when we're not sure whether or not this is a Force ghost, or whether or not this is another being, whether or not this is Anakin, or whether or not this is her subjective point of view, her seeing Vader there lends itself to the option that it's her subjective point of view, because she's seeing Vader even though Anakin is there, because that's what she sees whenever she sees Anakin now, is what he became. So yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, still look at the red eyes, like you said, David. It's just like, wow, this is just like you said, Nathan. It's like he's on Mustafar all over again. It's like, wow, this is really good.
And when she beats him here, you also see red, and her like seeing like her the possibility that she could turn. You see right there,
right. And also, this is like where she said that she wants to live, that she doesn't want to die, that she wants to, there you go, like she wants to live again and choose to live. And I think that this is where a lot of her issues comes to a head, and say, okay, now I come to some realization now, some self-realization. Okay, I've gone through like this journey now. I'm in a better kind of mental state to say I want to live.
And here I think it means, it's two meanings, of course. It means like I want to live because I want to beat him or whatever, but it's more like I choose to live in the future as opposed to the past. I choose to move forward, I think is what she's saying here when she says I choose not to dwell.
Right.
I choose not to dwell on what I could have done if I stayed with you to save you, what the lives that because we started the flashback and when she turned into a child with her regret, because if you remember in the early episode of the Clone Wars, she made this mistake and it led to a bunch of clones dying. So we see her remembering that she lost people because of her decision. So I think a lot of that stuff is weighing on her. A lot of that stuff is keeping her from pushing forward. It's probably why she left Sabine as well. She didn't want her to die, and she was that keep having her as a Padawan would lead to Sabine's death. So she's now choosing to put that stuff to the side, or let it inform her, but not necessarily rule her and live her life.
Right.
Which is it's really good writing.
Yes, which is something we don't really say a lot. We haven't really said that much about not just of Star Wars, but there were some episodes of Andor where we were like, oh, this is really good writing, actually. This is good.
Andor is like on another level of everything. It's like, this is the best thing that we've seen except for Andor, always, because Andor is like for adults. Like, kids can watch this and it's not insulting their intelligence. This is the best that we've seen of like classic kind of Star Wars, where it's not insulting kids' intelligence like the original trilogies, but it's still not necessarily like at an adult level like Andor, because you got a lot of complex political intrigue and back and forth in Andor. So it's not Andor level, but it's still pretty high. It's like it's basically at the level of the Clone Wars stuff. Like, that was also written for kids, but it was sophisticated enough that adults could, because I watched it as an adult. I was like in my 20s, 30s when I was watching Clone Wars stuff, because that's when it was on. So late 20s, early 30s when it was on. So like it's really good. And of course that was Dave Filoni's show. So yeah. And you see him change back here.
This is like where he changed back to like where he was at the very beginning of the episode. So yeah. It's like, lesson finished, training completed.
There's hope for you yet, he says. Okay. And then he's gone.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then this transition is also pretty cool. Like her transitioning out of the water. You can see that this is like a biblical allusion here, like baptism, resurrection. So there's a biblical reference here, but there's also later on we'll see a reference to tokenish, to like Gandalf the White coming back to life as well.
Yeah, I know it did. And also, now you just remind me, it's like Skyfall.
Skyfall.
Oh, Skyfall.
Skyfall.
It reminded me of that, and how he said, like his hobby is resurrection. Pretty much the same thing. We're all the same. Now this scene really it perplexed me a little bit as to she removes her head here. I don't know if it's because she was sleeping or something like that, but she spent a lot of time having this removed. So I was wondering,
what do you mean by removed? It's just like a headband. It's like this is what all her people look like without like jewelry on. Like it was just like the face paint. What's on her face is face paint. Like their skin is orange, and this is all cultural like tattoo, like painting on her face.
Right, but I was just like thinking about any type of symbolism as to why her headband is not there, because she spent like a few,
I don't know,
like maybe a good.
I don't know. I don't think it's something that you would sleep with. I think it'd be uncomfortable to sleep with it. Like, yeah.
Maybe she lied down with it before. I don't know. I have to look back to see what's happening there. But yeah, she's getting into like you said, Nathan, the Gandalf.
You can also see her ears there, like what her alien ears look like, because those are usually covered by the headpiece as well. But you can see her ears there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
very interesting. Yeah. So this is where I don't know what the context of this was.
They were talking about Sabine. Sabine basically. And they're talking about how to find her, and they're thinking through how to find her, and then she comes to a solution because he shows her the map, and then it's broken, and then she uses her ability to sense the conversation that she had with Balin, right? Yeah.
Right. This is the Gandalf the White. She was at the end of Rebels, at the end of the show, she was like Gandalf the White. So yes, they didn't really do that in live action.
They retconned it so they could actually have her death and resurrection in this show. So she was in gray when she picked up Sabine, but now I think from the rest of the series she's going to be in white. So yeah, this is her sensing the conversation. So we saw this conversation at the end of the last episode. So it's basically her hearing Sabine being persuaded by Balin. Right. So this is where she realizes that she's with them. So yeah, and
that it's a kind of her mission to try to find her and to figure out how to find her in a lot of ways. But then she starts to realize that maybe it's a good idea to look at the Purgles to kind of see. There we go. There's the Purgles to try to see where their thinking's at and try to use the Force. This scene was very interesting too because this is Mon Mothma right here, and she's played Mon Mothma in several other iterations as well. So
trying to Andor, which we were talking about just now. So yeah.
Yep, and like basically denying Hera to continue on with this.
No, she's saying here that because I have the subtitles. There's the Senate Oversight Committee is going to determine whether or not to take her command away from her. So yeah.
Politics. Politicians. So basically also trying to defy orders in some ways and she was basically asking Carson to stall because the fleet command's actually on its way to there right now, and trying to again buy time for Ahsoka to speak with the Purgles so that she knows where they're headed in a lot of ways. And again, this scene reminds us of Rebels in a lot of ways. Yeah. So this is pretty cool visuals here of them kind of traveling.
They realize the Purgles very well, and like all of this stuff, like we were talking about earlier, this is like movie level visuals here. Look how big it just keeps going and going and going, and it's not even
very well done. They're just very well done visually, and just and this is why there was limited release. They hyped it up to say, oh, it's gonna be released limitedly in now.
We didn't talk about that earlier this week. This episode was shown in theaters, so and I think it was worth it. They spent a lot of money on it, obviously, so to make those visuals look good. And also the cinematographer, Dave Filoni is not as skilled or as seasoned a director as, say, Rian Johnson or what's his name, the guy who did the J.J. Abrams. But he's a great storyteller, and he coupled with a really great cinematographer here. So even though he might not choose like the most interesting shots, like they all look beautiful in this episode because the cinematographer that he's working with is making every single shot look like a beautiful image. So yeah.
And so here Carson is trying to stall for time right here and trying to basically, oh, I don't really understand what you're talking about. This is really interesting how he was able to work his way through stalling them from coming to interfere with what Ahsoka and Hera is doing. And so she's here using the Force to basically talk with the Purgle. I'm surprised that they used baleen, and it is basically baleen whales. So baleen whales are the ones that have the brushes, not teeth, so they're not really teeth. It's very interesting that they use those type of imagery.
Yeah, it's those. I think what's his name? I'm blanking on the director's name. Denny. He did the same thing with the
Denny for Dune.
He did the same thing with the Dune worms as well. These are, like you said, they're not necessarily teeth. They're there to keep they're filters to keep things out of the mouth. Things out of the mouth. Yeah, but they're supposed to be whales.
And again, any of the big whales that you see on Earth, they all have that. They all have these. It's called baleen. It's like the filters, so it's very similar to that. But yeah, all these visuals here really great with the ghost ship right there, and then they pick up something on radar, and you see the whole. This is like really good. Like very in animation, it was really good. Now you see it in live action, you're like, whoa, this is just amazing. And they're look at them, they're like intrigued too. They're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I think Hera said you should probably just get out of the way or move with them because they could probably damage the ships if they didn't. So
this scene is very similar. Like the interaction there between Hera and Ahsoka is very much like the end of Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, oh, there's some hope there. We're gonna find Sabine. It's like that scene with Lando. It's like with Luke. It's like, oh, we're gonna find Han. We're gonna rescue Han. So it's like that type. It's a very nice parallel to Empire Strikes Back. So yeah, and then that was pretty much the end of it as the Purgles go into hyperspace and to try to off to the next adventure. Yeah. And the end credits is just so amazing. The music is just so really good. It's I'm really digging the whole vibe here. The endings. The end credits
it's really cool. Like I know all their shows, they usually have the credits at the end, but this is I think I heard someone mention that they're good enough that they could be at the beginning, like Game of Thrones, and I think that would give this show. Maybe they'll do it with the next show. Who knows whether or not the next show will be as good? But like if they put it at the beginning, it would definitely break it up and not make all the shows look the same. Having this at the beginning, it's not that long, and then you can have other credits at the end where you have like the writers and things like this. But this is like the credits that you usually see at the beginning of a show, basically, because it's a really cool animation. So
yeah, exactly. I think with the opening credits, they did try something different in terms of really getting to the more ethereal set of the regular Disney Plus intro that you see, but they still kept the helmets and the different types of helmets and stuff. They still kept that, but with different sound. So they did try to change it a little bit, but yeah, the end credits are definitely really good. I really do enjoy watching them.
Everyone is trying to have a tag at the beginning of their things to signify their franchise. Like Marvel started it first with the comic book things, and then DC did a thing, and now whatchamacallit, Star Wars feels like they have to do a thing to signify, oh, this is part of the Star Wars franchise. Star Trek is doing it now as well. There's like a ship at the beginning of every show. Yeah. Whatever show you're watching, the ship turns into the Star Trek Delta. So yeah, I guess they have that at the beginning of everything now. So just like the Marvel comic book, although it's not comic books anymore now. It's just now that we're 10 years into Marvel, it's basically just scenes from other Marvel movies and also like scripts as well, as opposed to like Marvel pages. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Any final thoughts about part 5 here?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
For me, I would say this. For the longest time in my mind, I felt like there's a subconscious disconnect between the animated shows like the Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and everything between basically a disconnecting between animated and the long action lores of Star Wars. This episode is for the first time I felt like the entire canon of Star Wars came together from across the decades, from the Attack of the Clones all the way up to after the Return of the Jedi. So, and also what I'm really, this is one of the biggest reasons I give it a 9, because of Hayden Christensen has really embodied this time, that more than even the Kenobi show. And he really embodied, Hayden Christensen really Anakin Skywalker, not Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. This is because Anakin is who Ahsoka is associated with the most. Right. She knows that Thor is Darth Vader, but it's not entirely all him and everything. So Hayden Christensen trained in different ages, from when he first brought it to the Clone Wars up to the last meeting point before they split up, before he became Darth Vader. I give Hayden Christensen my hats off to him for really embodying Anakin's style. I would say near perfectly, because he embodied the character a lot. And then like Nick Daniels says, that I think I like Anakin more than Luke Skywalker now, because we know Anakin's upbringing from when he was a kid, from episode 1, Phantom Menace, up until now. Now we see him there. And then also we get to see for the very first time that Anakin has some sort of redemption kind of thing. Even though I'm not sure if it's really him as a Force.
His redemption came in the Jedi movie, right? Like he could have killed his son, and he didn't. He attacked Sidious. I think that's where his redemption came. But yeah, the reason I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with it in this regard. He got his closure with his son, and now he gets his closure with his Padawan, which connects all the way from the Phantom Menace all the way to Return of the Jedi, or was it Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi was
Return of the Jedi. So it connects all those all the way through. So he got his redemption with his son, and at the end of that, Lucas recut that movie so that the Force ghost that shows up at the end is actually Hayden Christensen. So now he gets his redemption with his Padawan as well. So yeah.
And there's also one thing I had to point out though. This is I'm hoping on this one moment. This happened in Rebels when Kanan became a Jedi officially. I thought that Ahsoka would finally become a Jedi herself. But again, she left the Jedi Order, so I'm not sure how that would work if she were given that title. But the
Jedi Order doesn't exist. Is Luke a Jedi? I think he's a Jedi. So if he's a Jedi, Ahsoka's a Jedi. Like there's no order anymore. But Luke became a Jedi.
Well, that brings me up to another point. Because you remember back in Return of the Jedi, when Luke Skywalker visited Yoda and wants to complete his training, Yoda says no training required, and Luke said that I'm a Jedi. But Yoda says, no, there's one more thing you have to do. You have to face your biggest fear. Ahsoka's biggest fear is accepting what she has done in her past and stop blaming herself for everything she has done and everything, and stop blaming herself if she was one of the causes of Anakin's transformation to become Darth Vader and led his life to the dark side. So I believe that was her biggest test. She could have become a Jedi. But I like this. I was thinking I would expect to see. I think I was have an expectation that Anakin Skywalker will raise his lightsaber and says, "I dubbed the Ahsoka Jedi Knight." So, but again, as you pointed out, Nathaniel, that there's no Jedi Order right now. It's Luke right now recreating a new order right now. So,
yeah,
that's the thing.
Right. But I understand what you're saying, David, is that there's definitely some parallels between Luke and Ahsoka in a lot of ways. Both of them, they're trying to reconcile their feelings, their conflicted feelings about Anakin in a lot of ways. So it's very nice parallels there. And again, if you want to go back to watch kind of Boba, you saw a little bit of that parallel. Not parallel, but they actually intersect. Their worlds intersect in one of the episodes in Boba Fett where Luke was with Ahsoka. So very interesting stuff there overall.
Where she says she's a friend of family. Yeah.
So this is what we think. Please tell us what you think. So again, like, share, subscribe on more content like this, and we will see you in the next episode of Ahsoka and other type of content. We've been doing a lot of content creation right now, so hopefully again you can support us on this channel. All right, thanks. Bye.